Detective Ryan Carter had seen plenty of bodies in his 10 years on the force, but something about this one unsettled him. Maybe it was the way the victim's lifeless hand still clutched the shattered phone, as if he had been making a desperate call before the end. Or maybe it was the message written in lipstick across the cracked mirror, "You should have listened." The body belonged to Mark Halston, a well-known corporate lawyer. He was found sprawled across the floor of his luxury apartment in downtown Chicago, a single gunshot wound to the chest. No forced entry. No signs of struggle. Just a dead man, a broken phone, and a warning scrawled in crimson. Carter crouched beside the corpse, his partner, Detective Lisa Navarro, flipping through the victim's phone. "Last call was to a number not saved in his contacts," she murmured. "Dialed out at 10:47 p.m., just minutes before the neighbors heard the gunshot." Carter glanced at the phone screen. "Call it back." Navarro pressed redial. The line rang once. Twice. Then a voice answered. A woman's voice, trembling. "Hello. This is Detective Lisa Navarro with Chicago PD. Who am I speaking with?" A pause. Then the woman exhaled sharply. I can't talk right now." This is a homicide investigation," Navarro pressed. "Mark Halston was murdered last night. We need to know why he called you." A gasp. Then silence. "Meet me at the diner on 5th and Oak," the woman whispered. Midnight. No cops. Carter and Navarro exchanged looks. This woman knew something. And she was scared. The diner smelled of burnt coffee and desperation. Carter and Navarro arrived 10 minutes before midnight, staking out a booth in the back. The place was nearly empty, except for a lone waitress and an old man nursing a whiskey at the counter. At exactly midnight, the door creaked open. A woman entered, her hood drawn up, eyes scanning the room. She spotted them and hesitated before approaching. "You're cops," she muttered. "I told you to come alone. And let a witness meet a killer alone." "Not happening," Carter said. "Sit." She hesitated, then slid into the booth. Up close, Carter noticed her pale complexion, the dark circles beneath her eyes. She was terrified. "Start talking," Navarro said. "Who are you, and why did Mark call you?" "My name is Emily Sloane," she said quietly. "Mark was helping me, I think. I think that's why he's dead." "Helping you how?" Carter asked. Emily swallowed. "I was married to Richard Sloane." "You know the name?" They did. Richard Sloane was a real estate tycoon with a reputation for making problems disappear, sometimes literally. Rumors of bribery, fraud, even murder swirled around him, but nothing ever stuck. "He was abusive," Emily continued. "Controlling. I finally got the courage to leave, but he wouldn't let me go. He has eyes everywhere, people on his payroll. I went to Mark because he was one of the only lawyers willing to go up against Richard. He was helping me get a restraining order." Carter's gut tightened. "Did you tell anyone?" "No. Just Mark. And now he's dead. Do you think Richard killed him?" Navarro asked. Emily nodded. "I know he did. He always told me, 'No one walks away from me.' And now Mark is dead. I'm next." By morning, they had a search warrant for Richard Sloane's estate. His mansion was a fortress, high walls, security cameras, an iron gate. A butler answered, his expression unreadable as Carter and Navarro flashed their badges. "We need to speak to Mr. Sloane," Navarro said. "Mr. Sloane is unavailable," the butler replied. "Then he won't mind us looking around," Carter said, stepping past him. The butler hesitated but didn't stop them. The house was immaculate, but Carter knew a clean house didn't mean clean hands. As they searched the study, Navarro found something, a drawer left slightly ajar. Inside was a revolver. "One round missing," she said. "We need ballistics." Before Carter could respond, a voice echoed from behind them. "Detectives. I assume you have a warrant." Richard Sloane stood in the doorway, a smirk on his lips. He was tall, sharply dressed, and oozed confidence. The kind of man who thought the rules didn't apply to him. "We do," Carter said. "Care to explain the missing bullet?" Sloane chuckled. "I go to the range often. Does that make me a killer?" "Your ex-wife thinks so." Sloane's smirk faltered, just slightly. Emily is emotional. She likes to tell stories. Mark Halston wasn't a story, Navarro shot back. He was a man. And now he's a dead man. Sloane sighed, stepping closer. Detectives, if I wanted Mark dead, I wouldn't be so sloppy. Besides, Emily is the one who had the most to gain. Think about it, she inherits a fortune if I die. But if Mark dies first, she stays scared, stays under control. Convenient, don't you think? Carter exchanged a look with Navarro. Sloane was arrogant, but he wasn't stupid. And there was something unsettling about how easily he turned the suspicion back on Emily. That night, Carter couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something. He stared at Mark's phone records again. One number stood out, a burner phone, used only once. Tracing it led them to a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. Room 214. Carter and Navarro knocked. No answer. Carter tried the knob. Unlocked. Inside, the room was a mess. Papers strewn across the bed. A suitcase half-packed. And on the nightstand a lipstick. The same shade as the message on Mark's mirror. Navarro picked up a document from the bed. It's a bank statement. A wire transfer to Emily Sloane. Carter exhaled sharply. Emily lied. A floorboard creaked. They spun, guns drawn. Emily stood in the doorway, a gun in her trembling hands. I had no choice, she whispered. Mark figured it out. I tried to warn him, but Richard would never let me go. If he died first, I'd inherit everything. But Mark wouldn't help me. He wanted to go to the cops. So I had to. Her hands shook violently as she aimed the gun. But Carter stepped forward, voice steady. Emily, it's over. Put it down. Tears welled in her eyes. Then she collapsed to her knees, the gun slipping from her grasp. By morning, Emily Sloane was in custody. She confessed everything, her plan to kill Richard, how Mark refused to help, how she killed him before he could expose her. Richard Sloane walked away a free man. But as Carter watched him leave the station, he knew. Men like Sloane never stayed clean forever. It was only a matter of time before they'd meet again.